Good afternoon, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Thank you so much for joining as we are about to discuss a very important topical matter. And this afternoon, we are going to look at the symbiotic relationship between the gangs in Jamaica and the state, right? And also the police, the security forces, right? We're learning that from Prime Minister Andrew Holness in recent times, and this was cited on Nationwide, an article written on Nationwide, that's Nationwide Radio Jamaica, and Holness admits gangs have infiltrated police. And this was written on November 12th, 2024. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has admitted that over the last 30 years, criminal gangs have infiltrated. No, 30 years have infiltrated criminal gangs, the country's premier crime-fighting institution, the Jamaica Constabulary Force. That's the JCF. Holness made the startling admission while addressing graduates of the Force's Inspector Development course on Tuesday, and that was last year, November. Following the mass murder of 8 Jamaicans in Cherry Tree Lane in Clarendon, the Prime Minister had declared an all-out war on gangs operating in the country. So Prime Minister Andrew Holness is declaring an all-out war on the gangs. And how many times have we heard about these declared wars on the gangs, wars on poverty, wars on drugs? And every time that they declare these wars, these problems often become what? More tenuous and they become even more terrible, more horrific, more hideous. Absolutely. So I don't know if there's any new agenda here, but let us look at what the Prime Minister is also saying. Server, why is it now coming up? I'm not sure why. It's something, they're coming up with their nonsense. Okay, so let me see if I can go back on the screen. I can't. So let me go back and see if I could read you. I don't know what is happening here. All of these advertisements coming on the thing, and you're not able to get your article as you want to read it. When you want to read it, the advertisement comes and it frees up the document. Now, PM Observer saying Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness on Thursday called for a global war on gangs, while assuming that Jamaica will take its own security in its own hands and assume responsibility for stopping the flow of illegal guns into the island. So we're learning here that Andrew Holness is suggesting that Jamaica is going to take its own lack of security into its own hands. Now, what have we ever dealt with effectively when we take things into our own hands? We can't lower debt if IMF doesn't go there. We can't really build if you don't have investors, foreign investors. We can't do anything without the aid of someone else because we are a slave. We are a plantation-like economy. Right? So I have been saying that, and I don't understand what Andrew Holness means when he says that he's going to be taking matters of security into his own hands. I don't think he has the aptitude, neither the intellectual competence to be able to take the matters into his own hands. Delivering the keynote address at the 2025 security seminar of the Office of the National Security Advisor at AC Hotel in St. Andrew, Holness, who chairs the National Security Council, so he's on everything, said his administration will be making a significant investment in ensuring that all the necessary scanners are placed at the island's ports so that a higher percentage of containers and goods coming into Jamaica can be appropriately inspected. The fact of the matter here, when he speaks like this, we need to address some very important factors or questions. One is, who controls the gangs? Are the gangs, just operating by themselves, or are they receiving the aid of the state? Right? Now, are members of parliament, or should we say, are some of the members of parliament involved with these criminal elements? Are they? And if they are involved, what is the Prime Minister doing? Or what is the government, both on the incumbent and the opposition, what are they doing to combat this level of corruption in government, in the state? Are they trying to eradicate it? Or are they suggesting that only the gangs or only people, marauding criminals, people who are uneducated, the ones on the street, are the guilty ones? We have to ask ourselves these very important questions. Another very important question that I'd like to pose: what role does the private sector also have? Because we learn about the fact that even the flow of illegal weapons, arms into the country, you have private entities who are also involved. And who are they? Who are these major actors? And will the government challenge them? I understand from another article that Prime Minister Andrew Holness wrote yesterday in the Jamaica.The. He wrote an article which I shall be looking at very shortly, that this is going to be a public-private partnership. And every time they talk about this public-private partnership, you've got to have your antenna held up. Because oftentimes this is about racketeering and what is lucrative. And they're not thinking about the ordinary man. They're not thinking about your safety. They're thinking about how much money can be garnered. And we see this sort of, play out, this drama 5 years ago during the health epidemic. We saw it, the public-private partnership and the vested interests that were involved in such a drama, in such a major conflict, that I don't think many people have really digested what really happened. As a result of that, the governments can still do they can play their tricks up on the citizens, and they don't even see what really is at stake. That is the problem that I'm having with the worst population. Now, this is what Mr. Holness continues to say. Dr. Andrew Holness continues to say, and I quote, "We have given a directive to the customs agency to ensure that there is, through various public-private partnership modalities, a full rollout of all the scanners we need at all formal ports of entry," the Prime Minister said, while emphasizing that the major security threats Jamaica faces are not confined to its national borders. We have to be brutally honest with ourselves. That is what Dr. Holness is saying. We have to be brutally honest with ourselves. We have not placed the effort and resources behind strengthening our security apparatus, because money solves everything. Morality solves nothing. So even if the private sector and members of our government are involved in these criminal elements, it's money that's going to solve it. It is not the eradication. It is not trying to clean up the immorality that we see there and the gross neglect of, law and order. The flagrant neglect of law and order in that country. That's what they're going to do. Everything is money. And if they put like $10 billion into it, and if they invest, and I can tell you, if this is a public-private partnership, if they invest $10 billion into this thing, or $100 billion, let's say, the private sector wants to have its profit, right? And the government want to get their cut. The members of parliament need to get their cut. This isn't about solving the insecurity in Jamaica. This is not about solving the problem of gangs, because the gangs are in parliament. And even the Jamaica Gleaner, they can't say it's I who made up that terminology. But even the Gleaner, the Jamaica's premier daily, has suggested on many occasions that the members of parliament in Gordon House are the gangs of Gordon House. They have referred to them as such. And that should really titillate your mind and your imagination to understand what really is at stake here. I don't think you are, but guess what? That is so. You need to get your act together as well. Right? Now, the Prime Minister says here, for too long, we have been ineffective in putting in place the measures at our airports and our seaports to properly scan our containers, to put in place a well-developed and robust integrity mechanism for those persons who operate security at our ports, for putting in place the radars necessary to have domain awareness and control to track vessels coming into our waters that may be illegally carrying weapons and other contraband, he added, right? Now, if Mr. Holness, if Dr. Andrew Holness is suggesting or has suggested, has intimated very clearly, poignantly, that the gang members have invaded, have hijacked the security forces, the JCF, that's the Jamaica Constabulary Force, then all of these scanners and all that they're talking about, if the gangs are a part of the system, the political system, the economic system, the system at customs, then how are we going to solve the problem? Huh? So we're asking, therefore, the person who has, created the fire, the arsonists, we're asking them now to extinguish the fire. This is what he's literally saying. And this is the problem I'm having with Jamaica and the world at large, that the people who are the guilty ones, who are culpable for what is happening in your society, they are the ones who are purporting to be the saviors of what the high levels of immorality happening in our society, when they are highly immoral actors and actresses. Now, Andrew Holness, that's Dr. Andrew Holness, forgive my disrespect here, but Dr. Andrew Holness wrote in the Jamaica paper yesterday, in the Jamaica Gleaner, a global war on gangs is imperative. That's his word, is imperative. It means that it has to be. It's something that it's critical, and it has to be. It has to be implemented. A global, it's imperative, right? It's a command. Armed violence driven by organized crime has long been a crisis in Jamaica, but has been spreading across the wider Caribbean in recent years. For decades, we have suffered one of the highest murder rates in the Caribbean or in the world, with over 80% of homicides committed using firearms smuggled into the country. So 80% of the homicides committed in Jamaica are committed by firearms smuggled into Jamaica, right? From the United States. From the United States of America. And I've said to you that that is their greatest business. That is the United States' greatest business. Firearms, right? That are killing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And when you see US citizens walking around the world thinking that they're important, not understanding the plight of the nation and what these arms are doing to people's lives, you understand that they're brainless. Brainless. Not much better than Jamaicans are. Now, it would be interesting if you would get a copy online or at Amazon of Whitney Webb's book. Whitney Webb's book. And the title of the book is One Nation Under Blackmail. Try and get a copy of that book. 2 tomes of that book, 2 volumes of that book. Read it for yourselves. I've realized that many of you don't want to read. You want to talk, you want to have your opinions, but your opinions are not grounded in facts nor truth. Right? In neither facts nor truth. You don't want to read. You want to sit there and listen to the news and think that that is what is going to educate you. And you listen to other gossips, what your friends tell you, and you form your little gangs, and just like the gangs we see there in Kingston. And then you have the government is going to run roughshod over you, is going to exploit you. Right? Now, according to the CARICOM Implementing Agency for Crime and Security, that's the impacts, this is what Prime Minister Andrew Holness is suggesting, armed violence in our Caribbean neighbors is rapidly approaching that level. The common denominator is clear. Organized crimes, their transnational networks, and the weapons they illegally bring, traffic. That they illegally bring traffic. I don't understand that. And the weapons they illegally bring traffic. Yeah, that's sort of weird. These threats transcend national borders. Similarly, our response must be transnational. There needs to be some level of editing here, very poor editing coming from the Gleaner. Now, it is time to launch, it's interesting how the Gleaner talks about the educational system, and what comes from them a lot of times is really inferior work, really Gleaner. Really now, you have the Prime Minister writing an article and you can sit down and edit it and make sure that it is properly written for the entire world to see. And then you are going to talk about teachers not doing their work and who is not, and your work is really not up to par. The Gleaner is not really doing an excellent job of, editing its articles. Now, it is time to launch a global war on gangs, a coordinated international effort to dismantle the vast criminal networks fueling instability across regions, from the cartels of Mexico to the gangs of Haiti, from the Ecuadorian drug syndicates to the extortionists here in Spanish Town. Armed groups are increasingly resembling paramilitary organizations, threatening not just citizen security, but state security. So we are seeing here, the Prime Minister is saying, is us versus them. But the us versus them, who are the us and who are the them? That is what we have to understand. Is the government a part of the them or the us? Yeah, I don't know. Right? You have to decide that, because this is going to be critical if we are seriously thinking about eradicating gangsters and gangsterism, because that is what the entire culture is about: gangster and gangsterisms. Gangsterism. We have been singing that, and we have been embedding that sort of philosophy into our psyche, into the national psyche. Right? That is what we have there: a gang-infested nation state. And how is it going to be cleaned up when people who are guilty are the ones pretending not to be guilty? That's the question, and I don't know how that is going to be solved. You can tell me. Jamaica does not manufacture firearms. That's what the Prime Minister continues to assert. Yet they continue to flood our communities. Criminal networks exploit weak points in shipping channels, custom systems, and porous maritime borders to import the tools of their violent trade and turn our most vulnerable communities into battlegrounds. These criminal enterprises are not isolated. They form part of a transnational network that spans the Caribbean, Latin America, and North America. Now, if you're following the news and you see what is happening in Mexico and Canada and the United States, and when Donald Trump threatened Canada and said that you're going to become the 51st state of the United States, and please don't take this sort of language lightly, as if it's Donald Trump's agenda, right? Because if you've been reading years ago, the elites of the world are divvying the world. They are dividing the world into regions, right? You have the Mercosur in South America, right? You have the Central American countries with DR, with the Dominican Republic. That's a region. That's CARICOM, right? We have that's a bloc also. And why not have the North American bloc? And they have been working on what they call the North American Union for years, right? So when Trump is suggesting here that, the Canada is going to become the 51st state of the United States, don't take him lightly. Don't think it's a joke. Don't think that this is a joke, because this is a part of the agenda for many years, only that you have not been following attention. You have not been paying attention. You have not been paying attention. As a result of that, you think that Trump is a joker and, oh, this guy is coming and he is, bringing chaos to the world, right? But the CIA is chaos, and the government of the United States is run by the national security state. Okay? Get that into your cranium. Now, one of the things also that we have to understand is that when you see them now in the United States, you hear that Trump is suggesting that Mexico has to bring a number of security forces at the border, the Mexican-US border, and Canada has to do the same if they want Trump to eliminate or to decrease the tariffs on their trade, on their goods coming into the United States. Now, that's interesting, because when I saw this whole talk about security forces at the border, I realized that is more control. That's surveillance, right? So it's an agenda, and it seems to me that secretively, they are part of that agenda. It seems to me clearly that this is an act. This is an act. And we, the citizens, are the ones who are going to be surveilled, right? So they're telling you about a problem, and it seems like they want to solve the problem. But how do they solve the problem when they themselves, some of them, not all of them, when some of them are part of the problem? How do they solve the problem? right? And this is a question that we have to ask ourselves. Hope that you are following, hope you are paying attention, and you also be doing your reading. Here is what Dr. Andrew Holness continues to say in his article yesterday in the Gleaner. The crisis in Haiti is a stark example of what happens when gangs gain unchecked power. And I'm happy that he has come up with this, because this is what has happened in Jamaica, that gangs have gained unchecked power and they are controlling the state. Right? Now, for the last 4 years, heavily armed criminal factions have been controlling swaths of the country, that's Haiti, paralyzing state institutions and turning the capital, Port-au-Prince, into a war zone, which Jamaica is. These groups do not operate in isolation. They are supplied with arms and resources by criminal actors embedded in the Haitian diaspora and neighboring Dominican Republic. But, what Andrew Holmes is not suggesting also is that the Haitian elites, the Haitian private sector, are also involved. And they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right? And that's why they can live like kings and queens. And you respect them, because anybody who makes lots of money, you respect them. You don't know the source or the origins of their money, but you respect people with lots of money. Right? And they can go to the DR and they can buy up Dominican properties, and they reside or they lodge in very luxurious hotels at the expense of the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Haitian people, and perhaps lives in the DR and other parts of the Caribbean. Right? This is the stark reality, and we've got to get our acts together. We've got to get our thought processes. Not only Prime Minister Andrew Holness has to get his act together and his thought processes, but you also have to get your thought processes and your act together. Right? Because these things sound well. It sounds good what the Prime Minister is suggesting. And he has to deal with it if he wants to have some level of order. Right? The problem is that we are not seeing clearly what is happening in terms of how is he going to rid the private sector and take away such a lucrative trade from them and from the United States. How is it going to stop? I don't know. Now, it is also interesting that Haiti, which has not had a government for many years now, or several years, I should say, yet it is not on the, it's not at the crisis level. It is at the crisis level in terms of crime and violence. Yeah, well, I can't downplay that. But the fact is that Jamaica, which has had a so-called functioning government for years, is not far away from Haiti. So what if we were in the same predicament like Haiti of not having a functioning government? What if we, even for 2 months, what's going to happen to us? If we have a so-called functioning government and the crime rate is out of control and has been for decades, as the Prime Minister is suggesting, and he is spot on, he's right, he's correct, right? What would happen to us if we were to find ourselves tomorrow in Haiti's position? We'd probably have like 10,000 murders per day. I don't know. You tell me. Haiti is not an anomaly, he's suggesting. It is an harbinger. If left unaddressed, the same fate could befall other nations in the region. Ecuador, once one of Latin America's most peaceful nations, has been an explosion in cartel-related violence, with its homicide rate surging past 40 per 100,000, prompting their government to declare a state of internal armed conflict. Yet in Jamaica, that level of violence has been a reality for 3 decades, with some members, I think it's more, with some members of society, including the opposition, refusing to acknowledge the emergency. Now, I don't think that they're playing politics, because I think anybody in Jamaica, any serious-minded person, any person who is sane, who has a brain that functions, know that Jamaica's crime rate is out of control. The entire world knows that. Nothing new under the sun. Right? So we have to see what the Prime Minister is saying, and wondering, we have to say, is this about controlling us, or is it about surveilling us? Or is it that they really want to clean up crime and violence? Now, he's saying that there's a need for international response. He said in the previous article in Observer that he's going to do it on his own. He doesn't, Jamaica's going to take its crime and violence into its own hands. That's what Prime Minister Andrew Holness said. Now he's suggesting that we need international response. Sometimes I really wonder what is in Andrew Holness's head. I do really wonder sometimes when he speaks. It has been said that Latin America and the Caribbean is the most violent region in the world that is not also at war. With respect, this is a fallacy. Is it? He's saying that with respect, it's a fallacy. It's at war. Particularly Jamaica is at war with itself. Countries in this region may not be at war with each other, but we are at war with this extended transnational threat network. Okay? Well, we are both. It's both. The greatest advantage that organized crime has in this war is its ability to function across borders, while governments remain constrained by national jurisdictions. As states, we have often attempted to fight transnational criminal groups in isolation, while they have perfected the art of international cooperation in intelligence sharing and logistical coordination. Interesting. So here, just a lot of words he's using. Huh? There's a lot of words the Prime Minister is using. But I would say here that it's good that the Prime Minister decides that he wants to tackle the problem of organized crime in Jamaica and perhaps in the region. I don't know if at this juncture of the history, if it's not too late. Because when you can hear the Prime Minister boldly saying, truthfully, but brutally honest, he's brutally honest with his pronouncement, with his pronunciation, his pronouncement rather, that the gangs have infiltrated the police force. The Prime Minister is on record saying that on Nationwide. He was addressing the security forces in which he suggested that the gangs have infiltrated the security force. The same thing is happening in Haiti. In fact, there is one of the reasons for which the security forces have had to recruit other members from different countries is that there is a thin line now, a razor thin line between the gangs and the security forces in Haiti. And apparently the same is happening in modern Jamaica. Right? So who's going to clean up the mess? Who is going to clean up the mess? What about the private sector? Those of these people who might be involved, who are involved with these criminal elements, the illegal trafficking of firearms into the country. Is Andrew Holness the same guys who give him money for his election and, support the government and they get their cut? Is he going to stop them? I don't know. You'll decide. So that's what I have to say to you. All the best to you. Hope I'll see you in another one. All the best. Bye-bye.